This is DW News Africa. Coming up, forced into combat in a faraway land. Families in Kenya are mourning loved ones made to fight for Russia in its war with Ukraine. They want answers from the government about the fate of their sons, fathers, brothers and husbands.
I don't know whether my son survived. I don't know what happened to my son. I am just asking the government to help us. We want our sons back, dead or alive.
Also ahead, civilians in Somalia caught in the crossfire as US strikes target the Al-Shabaab militant group. Communities near militant-held areas say the attacks are shattering their lives. Hello there, I am Eddy, Micah Jr., and you are welcome to the program. How many Africans have died fighting for Russia in its war on Ukraine? Last month, a new report released the names of hundreds of Africans who joined the Russian army. More than 1 in 5 of them are now believed to be dead. Many others are wounded or missing. For the families left behind, the pain is deepened by uncertainty as their governments struggle to give them clear answers about the fate of their loved ones. Our correspondent Felix Maringa has been following the situation in Kenya. Here's his report about the families demanding the return of their missing sons, brothers, and husbands.
A memorial service to honor James Kamau's life. His loved ones feel doubly robbed. He's dead, yet they have nobody to bury, no way to take their leave of him. The 33-year-old went to Russia last summer after he was promised a job as a truck driver. But instead, he was sent to the front line of Moscow's war with Ukraine. He never came back. His widow is heartbroken. Together with their daughter, she has been waiting for a call from James for 8 months.
I'm still in disbelief. We have had a memorial service, but I don't believe it. I do not have his body or the badge they're saying they identified him with. They should at least give us one. What will I tell my child? It would be nice if I told her, this is where your dad is buried, at this place. She saw her dad's picture on a t-shirt and she asked where daddy is. It is so painful to us.
It's so painful to me and also painful to us.
James' sister Margaret said her brother had traveled to several countries for work in the past and always came back home. She's furious with the Kenyan government for not protecting her brother.
For me, I can blame the government. On all the deaths that have happened in Russia, I blame the government. Because I don't see how a Kenyan citizen would travel out of the country without the knowledge of the government, especially my brother. He's everything I had. Yeah, he was the only brother I had, and my heart is bleeding. So, for the government, let it bring back our brothers, dead or alive. We will be ready for anything.
James is one among the thousands of young Africans who left their home countries in the hope of finding something meaningful in Russia. He traveled over 8,000 kilometers from his home here in central Kenya and ended up dead while fighting for the Russian military. Another African family that has lost a loved one in a war far away from home. James' family is not alone. About 50 families came together recently in Nairobi to demand an end to the Russian army recruitment in Kenya. Mothers, brothers, and human rights defenders marched through the streets to deliver a petition to Parliament. They hope this time the government will at least listen.
My son was told there is a job in Russia as a driver. When he landed there, he told me, "Mom, the contract I've been told to sign is not that of a driver. I've been told I will be going to the front line."
Vita. I don't know whether my son survived. I don't know what happened to my son. I am just asking the government to help us. We want our sons back, dead or alive. We just want our sons.
A report presented to the Kenyan parliament suggests that over 1,000 young Kenyans had been recruited to fight in the Russian war. Back at James' home, 33 candles are lit to signify the number of years he spent on this earth, many shared with his family. His widow made a promise to her husband and daughter.
I'll make sure I give her the best life. The life that you wanted your daughter to live, I promise that I will give her.
Another child who will grow up without a father, consumed by the war in Ukraine.
For more on this, let's bring in Beverly Ocheng, political analyst with Control Risks based in Dhaka. It's a global consultancy that provides strategic intelligence. Hello, Beverly. Always good to see you. Welcome to the program. Now, as we just saw in the report, James Kamau's family is not just grieving a loss. They also feel betrayed. When a citizen is duped into a foreign war under false pretenses, where does the state's responsibility begin and end?
I mean, that's been the difficult thing to establish. We do see denials on both sides. So with Russia itself, where most of these men have ended up, they've said that they did not facilitate the travel for people who are recruited into their forces, but they also have a sort of legal loophole whereby foreign nationals can actually join what they call their special military operation in Ukraine. On the Kenyan side, there's been investigations by the National Intelligence Agency demonstrating that there may be some loopholes in immigration, in documentation, which have allowed agencies that are operating clandestinely, almost illegally in the country, to be able to recruit people and send them to a foreign front line. But the concern is they're not able to get answers from the government. There's no sense that there will be any legal recourse for them. There was one person who was arrested and has been charged with the recruitment, but it will be a lengthy process before they're able to actually get answers to the questions that they have about how it happened and how it was even allowed to happen in the first place.
Right. I mean, that really takes me straight to my next question, which sounds even interesting to ask, because you would assume the government will take responsibility for it, right? But Kenya's government is blaming, as you said, rogue agents. Is it even possible for a recruitment operation this large to happen without some level of official, diplomatic, or institutional bypass? Because it's a bit strange, isn't it?
I mean, that's the thing. The bypasses themselves were probably very difficult to detect, or that people have been operating in this system in a way that they were not being easily detected or being sanctioned by the government, because the issue about responsibility is how far the government was actively involved in this process. But we did find from the investigation by the National Intelligence Agency that was presented before Parliament that it may have involved immigration. Kenya moved on to tightening the movement of people going into Russia. There were allegations that they were using tourist visas to be able to go abroad, traveling through the UAE and other places. And then they found another loophole where they would use Eastern African countries to then move on to the Russian front line. So that's the other loophole that needed to be sealed. But it does operate like various other networks, not just the Russian recruitment, but even other agencies that sometimes recruit for other places like the Middle East, whereby you find that there is an abuse of the system. There are various loopholes and gaps. People can access passports, air tickets, documentation, being able to sign contracts. And in many instances, they're taking advantage of the limited information of the target audience. In many instances, people who are desperate for employment, people who may not be as exposed to information or who are given misinformation, misrepresented for that information on behalf of an agency that is very difficult to be able to find.
Right. I mean, from the way you explain it, sounds like such a mess, isn't it?
I mean, we are seeing a lot of damage control, which does demonstrate that the government in Kenya is at least keen to ensure that they do try to net out people who may be responsible. We saw one of the foreign minister, as well as the senior cabinet secretary, Musalia Mudavadi, going to seek more answers from Russia on how this came about. It's not just a Kenyan issue. We saw the outcry in South Africa, which went as high profile as the daughter of the former president. We saw celebrities being active actively involved in the recruitment of people going into this special economic zone, so-called Alabuga, where women have been operating or assembling drones, allegedly. So it does demonstrate that there is a level of institutional power, reach, influence for the people who are involved, and that now the governments need to take vocal action and legal action to demonstrate that this is not tolerable, and at the same time inform people so that they are aware and they do not fall into the same loopholes.
Right. So tell us more about that. I mean, what diplomatic or legal steps should the government take to trace, identify, and really bring back any Kenyan nationals who may still be in Russia?
Well, for now, it depends on the cooperation, both on the Russian and the Ukrainian side. Ukraine has been able to issue various statements on either the identities and nationalities of people who have been involved in the front line and is working with governments in terms of either repatriation or some legal action. Russia itself, even though the law itself allows for foreign nationals to take part in the current operation in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, with Kenya, they have pleaded the Russian government for more cooperation to have a sense of visibility of who their nationals are there, how they can be how they can be repatriated into the country. Families are also seeking support from the Kenyan consulates, which are based both in Moscow as well as here in Nairobi, to be able to get the kind of support they need. But ultimately, the legal recourse will take a bit of time. In Kenya, for instance, there's no actual law on fighting in foreign countries, unlike a country like South Africa, which it is definitely legal, and so people may face some ramifications. But how to limit that will be the challenging issue. We did see some journalists claim that despite reporting on these recruitments, people were also reaching out to them, asking if they can also join the Russian front line.
Interesting. So as investigations continue, how can the state support affected families and ensure transparency?
At this point, it's being vocal about instances where they have found nationals finding themselves in the front line, being vocal about the actions that they are taking, facilitating their return, ensuring that they do get psychosocial support, because beyond just the legalities and the issues around that, there are some traumatic incidents that they may have been involved in. We have seen some very disturbing videos and messages around how many of these nationals are being treated in the front line. At the same time, what legal recourse is there for families so they can be clear about the course of action to take against the networks that have been allegedly linked to this recruitment, tightening immigration regulations, civic education for the public, and a full understanding of people's rights and responsibilities, especially when they do find themselves in unfamiliar areas, where the contacts for the embassies are, to be able to seek help to leave the country if they need to, and a general sense of public awareness.
Right. Beverly Ocheng, political analyst with Control Risks. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Eddie.
A new constitution has been signed into law in Somalia, paving the way for lawmakers to be directly elected by the public. Now, let me explain. Direct voting used to happen in Somalia until dictator Siad Barre's military regime seized power in 1969 and ruled for 3 decades. Now, since 2000, a clan-based system has been used, with elders choosing MPs who then elect the president. Now, earlier this month, Parliament approved the constitutional changes. President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud says the move is a step toward a more functional system of government. But there are doubts Somalia is ready to hold a nationwide vote. Lawmakers have also pushed planned elections back by up to a year. Some Somalis did vote in local elections late last year, but the country still has no agreed national election framework and is deeply fractured along state lines. Regional leaders, including those in Puntland and Jubaland, are boycotting the federal government's plans to centralize power. Somaliland broke away in 1991, but has only been recognized by Israel. The country still faces a major insurgent threat from Al-Shabaab militants, which control large areas around the capital, Mogadishu, despite being pushed back by U.S. strikes and an African Union offensive. Now, those U.S. attacks have re-intensified under President Trump, just as they did during his first term. Here are all the sites targeted by the US in their operations against Al-Shabaab. The strikes have killed not only fighters, but also hit thousands of civilians. DW spoke to a family from Jamame, which has been impacted by the airstrikes. Journalist Mohamed Gabobe met Somalis who say they suffered US strikes and worked with DW's East Africa correspondent, Sela Onyeko, to bring you their story.
Abdelkader is just 7 years old. His mother, Marian Guled, says he was injured by an airstrike 4 months ago.
When I first brought him here to Mogadishu, he was badly wounded and bleeding. We traveled through difficult terrain. Thank God he's doing better now, but he still has shrapnel in his body and he needs the shrapnel removed. We don't know how he'll end up. Ultimately, it might impact his nerves.
Guled and her children are 400 kilometers away from home. In November 2025, her hometown Jamame was hit by the airstrike. It lies in an area controlled by the extremist group Al-Shabaab in the south of Somalia. The timing of the attack concurs with an airstrike claimed by US Africa Command together with the federal government. Guled says she had heard the drones overhead.
When the airstrikes happened, I was preparing breakfast for my children who had returned from Quran school. That's when the first airstrike happened outside our home. My children ran outside, I ran after them, and a second airstrike hit. 3 of my children were wounded, 2 boys and a girl.
Her older son and daughter were treated locally, but an operation to remove the shrapnel lodged in Abdelkader's body would cost up to $1,000, a price she can't afford. The efforts to fight the extremist groups in Somalia have been going on for years, but the return of the Trump administration has spelled a major spike in the number of airstrikes. In 2025, the US conducted 124 airstrikes in collaboration with either state or local governments. Somalia's State Minister for Defense praised the US support.
The most important thing is that air support that was given to us achieved its desired effect. For example, in Sako, it took out the biggest bomb factory in the region. This is a milestone for us, and we thank the US government.
The US Africa Command generally publishes quarterly reports on civilian harm, but it hasn't updated its report since June last year. And while the authorities claim that their targeting is precise, some cases seem unclear. In September last year, Omar Abdullahi Abdi was killed by a US drone strike in the semi-autonomous state of Puntland. The US Africa Command claimed they had targeted an arms dealer. Abdi's family, however, say he was a tribal elder who had been fighting against and not for Al-Shabaab and ISIS in the region. DW can't verify these claims, but a police report says that he was involved in peace-building efforts and had no criminal record. The local Puntland army, an ally of the US, confirmed this.
His clan suffered the most casualties in the war against Al-Shabaab and ISIS, both past and present, and he was a tribal chief for this clan. If he were a criminal, he could have been arrested. Or if we had been made aware, we could have detained and arrested him.
A Puntland-based human rights group has called on the US for more transparency, also to build more local trust for the fight against the insurgents. Abdi's family could not agree more. They've built a memorial at the site of the strike.
All they said was that they had killed him, but they did not give us enough information. And we are demanding that they tell us the full details of why they killed a respected and a revered leader.
While Abdi's family continue to search for answers, Guled simply wants the treatment her son needs. She'll hold on to that hope for as long as she can.
For more on this, I spoke to Elias Adam, a lawyer with a coalition of human rights defenders. He starts by assessing the current human rights landscape in Somalia.
Somalia is a country that's now recovering from a long period of armed conflict, civil war, and also fight with terrorists, and also loose clan militias that are also targeting civilians. The human rights record, the human rights violations in Somalia are now unprecedented. The number of cases that are approaching human rights defenders in Somalia, like the Coalition of Somali Human Rights Defenders, now being their lines of contact are being now made busy by victims reporting violations of airstrikes, drone strikes, also targeted extrajudicial and summary killings by state and non-state actors. This is very, very unfortunate. Though the state has established a National Human Rights Commission, which also has been selected in a style of intransparency. Transparency issue has been reported also because the also establishment of such commission should respect the Paris principles.
Right. You're right about the transparency issue there because it's difficult to even, ascertain the kind of damage that's being done. Again, talking about the strikes that are hitting or seemingly targeting civilians, families, of course, are reporting the harm, but official statements from the government deny any civilian casualties. How are these conflicting narratives impacting, public trust in both Somali authorities and international partners like the US?
Basically, the international stakeholders in the fight against terrorism in Somalia need basically to build public trust in their fight against the terrorism in Somalia, because casualties of civilians are skyrocketing. People start to lose trust in the fight against terrorism in Somalia. Of course, Al-Shabaab is a very dangerous group that also people may fear for their control or taking control more territories in Somalia. But also civilian casualties cannot be overlooked and also need to be addressed immediately. There were cases where the U.S. has already compensated and has admitted to have been behind. But also, let's not be fooled by in Somalia, there is not only one actor. In the drone and airstrikes, there are many actors in Somalia. There is also the United Arab Emirates. There's also the state also has some drones, and they are also conducting their own also. But anything that comes beyond their capacity, they request their U.S. ally to intervene.
Right. It seems like quite a complicated situation on the ground with so many actors involved. But for the families who believe their loved ones were wrongly targeted, how can they seek accountability?
Those families can seek accountability through coming out and speaking loudly about their cases, and also approaching rights activists, and also those could connect them to the international also organizations like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and also advocates for Human Rights International, and other also advocates for Victims International also that has successfully worked on many cases that has resulted in compensation.
Right. I mean, look, we all know what's currently going on in Somalia. The country's basically navigating constitutional disputes, federal state tensions, and social fragility. How can or should the country navigate through all of this?
Somalia, to navigate through this complicated terrain of security and also human rights, where security and human rights are interconnected and civilian lives are at stake, I think there needs to be a very smart political leadership in the country. I think the current leadership has failed in addressing many issues, including the political crisis in the country. Now we know also the president and the opposition are at loggerheads. because the opposition is accusing the president to have intentions of extending and also to have ratified a constitution that's also contested by the opposition.
Right. There's a lot that needs to be done. Ultimately, though, do you believe there will be accountability?
Sure, there will be accountability because, all these violations are not only at domestic level, it's international, and it's regulated by the international humanitarian law, Geneva Convention 4, the additional Protocol 1, and also Articles of 48, 52, 57. Those all regulate respecting and protecting civilians in wartime, not targeting civilians, and also not civilian objects as military objects.
Right. We'll keep our eyes and ears on the ground to see how things develop. Elias Adam, diplomat, human rights defender, and legal advocate, thanks for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's it for now. For more of our stories, go to dw.com/Africa or visit us on social media. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.